We're happy to have you here with us. It's a few minutes after 2, so I think it's time for us to get started. So welcome to the 2021 University of Utah 3-Minute Thesis Virtual Showcase. We're so happy to have you all here. And the first thing I want to do is introduce Katie Ullman, the Associate Dean of the Graduate School, who's going to give us our official welcome.
Guess I have to also unmute for that to work. Welcome, everybody. I'm so happy to see everybody here, and especially to see all the participants. And I just want to welcome you to this event, which I'm very excited to see unfold. It's an important event for the graduate school because we really value the ability to not just do the research that's important for graduate school, but to communicate the research. And this has been a great venue for gaining those skills. There are a lot of people to thank, and I'm going to start with Francine Mahak and Jennifer Seagraves, who have facilitated the workshops for this and figured out how to do that virtually, which you know, it's been a transition and a challenge that they really rose to, and I just so much appreciate their really tireless commitment to this event, and just how passionate they are about the 3MT as a forum for helping graduate students gain important skills, as well as highlighting the research that's going on at our university. And really that research depends on the graduate students, so they're playing an extremely important role. I also want to thank Holly Lumbert and Jason Stid from the graduate school, who have worked behind the scenes to get this to run smoothly, and they really went the extra mile, especially with all the changes to do this virtually, and I am very appreciative. Sabrina Smith in the office also helped by making our backdrops, which I wanted to give her a shout out. Other people that I want to thank before we get to the main event are some faculty who came to some of the workshops to provide a bit of extra feedback. And I particularly just wanted to mention that Ann Cook from the College of Education, Thunder Jalili from College of Health, Jay Gertz from the School of Medicine, and Helga Schugart from Humanities participated in that way. And I think that their support of the event was inspirational to students to see faculty and how they approach some of these communication issues, and just to get their feedback from faculty maybe who aren't in their particular area. I really appreciate the input from faculty, and I actually hope that we can kind of continue down that line as an ongoing tradition. So I did want to mention, if there are faculty out there listening right now who would like to get more involved in the future, to get in touch with me, because I think that we could really spread how much we can encompass into this 3MT series if we had you know, a large support network. And then finally I want to thank the student participants who we're going to hear from, and those also who were taking the workshops beyond this final showcase. I just think it's great that you put in the time and showed your own interest, excuse me, and your value in communicating research. And I hope that you've gained something from this, but I do appreciate the dedication you've shown by making it to this point. And then finally, I want to thank our judges who generously agreed to come and listen and offer their own input as to in the selection of the winners of this event. And we're going to hear more from them later, and I think just hearing their own views on this will be very interesting. But just to let you know who's here, well, Nels Elde is from the School of Medicine and the Department of Human Genetics, and he's an associate professor there, and he's also a 2020 MacArthur Fellow winner, which is one of the most prestigious awards one can get. But beyond that, I will say Nels is just a strong advocate for science communication. He's partnered with the graduate school in the past on different projects, and one of those was about podcasting, because Nels runs a science podcast. But he's really both a great scientist and a great communicator of science. And then Sarah George, who is the Chief Philanthropy Officer at the University of Utah, has also joined us as a judge, and her past role as Executive Director of the Natural History Museum, I think also there was just so much encompassed in that role that that really clearly links to the importance of communicating research and science out to the public. And I really appreciate that she's joined us as well. And then Jason Perry, who's Vice President for Government Relations at the University of Utah and Director of the Hinckley Institute of Politics. I also know that he works tirelessly on behalf of the university to advocate for us at the legislature. And all three of these judges, really, communication is at the center of their roles. And I think their input into student communication will be really beneficial. So thank you to the judges for participating today. And I think that really concludes my thanks and my welcome. And again, I'm just really excited to hear what we're going to hear today. So thank you all.
And now I would like to introduce Francine Mahack, who's going to give us an overview of the 3MT program. I would like to say that Francine has been working with this program at University of Utah for at least 6, maybe 7 years. So she is definitely the one of us who has the most experience here.
Jennifer, thank you. It's such a pleasure to be here because, yes, we've been doing this every year since 2014, and it's been really exciting to work with the graduate students. So first, I'd just like to give you all a quick overview of 3-minute thesis that we affectionately refer to as 3MT. Jen, if you could just move to the next slide. Thank you. So what is 3MT? It's a thesis competition, and you'll see the presenters explain their research in 3 minutes with a single slide, no animation. That's the rules. To the rest of us, a non-initiated audience. I'm sure some of you will be very familiar with some of what the presenters are talking about and not at all with some of the others, except that they will have spent a lot of time meeting the challenge of making it as accessible to all of us as possible. And considering that these students spend their time communicating about their research at a very sophisticated level, this is really quite the challenge that we're really impressed with them for bringing it to us in a way that we can understand and see the value. So 3-minute thesis is now in over 900 countries, over 85 countries and 900 universities. And it started just 12 years ago at the University of Queensland in Australia, about 13 years ago. And I just wanted to briefly mention how it started. So Queensland in 2008 was experiencing a terrible drought, and municipalities had provided individual homes with 3-minute egg timers to help people keep their showers down to 3 minutes to conserve water. So a professor at the University of Queensland had a great idea in the shower, of course, where we get our great ideas, thinking this would be a great way for our graduate students to present their research in a really concise and accessible way. And that gradually turned into a competition, which, as you can see, is now spread all over the world. So what does 3MT do for the presenters, but also for the rest of us and beyond? And it's First, for their conference presentations, any presentations, we become more engaging and more clear with this kind of practice. And also, the presenters can engage a much broader audience in the value of their research. For example, scholars outside their field who might see research collaborations, for instance, potential funding sources for their research, legislatures, companies, the public, and potential employers when they're ready to make their professional transition and present themselves for academic positions and non-academic positions. And best of all, their families finally understand what they're doing all day in their research. So it's a great advantage. So today I just want to mention that we're going to have 3 kinds of prizes. There'll be an audience award at $100. There'll be a runner-up award of $200 and a $300 award as the first prize. And all the presenters will receive I'm trying to think of what it's called, a laser pointer. I think that's correct. Okay. So I just wanted to explain the poll, the audience choice poll. So once the presenters have all presented, there'll be a poll. But audience members out there, please make sure that you're making a note as you listen to the presentations of which presenters you think you might be choosing from. At the end, when the judges are out to deliberate, we will put up a slide with all the presenters' names and the titles of their presentations so you can think of your choice. And then we'll put up the poll where you will be able to vote, and you'll vote just once. Okay, so Jen, on to the show.
Great. Okay, so I just have a few notes for you all before we get started. And I want to start off by saying that you can all control the ratio of the size of the speaker screen to the size of the slide screen by dragging the center line between them. So you can see the speaker larger if you like instead of small, which I believe is the default. And then we'd also just like to remind all the attendees and all the participants to stay muted unless you're the one presenting. And presenters, when you see your slide come up, that's the time to unmute yourself. And for the audience, I would like to say, again, reiterating what Francine just said, keep track of your favorites so that you can vote for them in the audience choice poll at the end. All right, without further ado, our first speaker today is Piya Siripoksup, and she is a PhD candidate in rehabilitation sciences in the Department of Physical Therapy and Athletic Training. And the title of her presentation is "You Are How You Move, How Physical Inactivity Leads to Chronic Diseases." You are up.
Picture a live mouse in this small cage. I'm holding in my hand what could be our solution to uncovering why sitting too much leads to chronic diseases. In the era of smartphones, social media, automated services, and of course, the pandemic we're in, more and more people are becoming physically inactive. Being inactive or sedentary means you get less than 30 minutes of moderate intensity physical activity per day. In other words, just sitting too much. Over 80% of Americans do not meet physical activity requirements. Now, I'm not here today to convince you to train for that marathon, or even be able to climb Mount Olympus for that matter. I'm here today to tell you that a sedentary lifestyle causes chronic diseases, one of which includes muscle insulin resistance. Did you know that 1 in 3 Americans have a silent blood sugar problem known as insulin resistance? When muscles become insulin resistant, it propels forth this domino effect, knocking down healthy functioning in nearly every aspect of the body, giving rise to conditions like obesity, type 2 diabetes, heart attack, stroke, and cancer. We still don't know who the culprit is behind muscle insulin resistance. We do know that the mitochondria, as some of you may know as the powerhouse of the cell, can become worse at burning the sugar we eat and turning it into energy our bodies can use. My research shows that inactive humans and animals, much like this mouse in this small cage here, have lower amounts of a certain type of fat, called phosphatidylethanolamin, or PE, in the mitochondria of their muscles, and that these mitochondria don't seem to work as well with less PE. If we think of the mitochondria in the muscle like a car engine, and PE is motor oil, the oil keeps the engine healthy and running smoothly, much like the good-looking engine pictured on the left. As we become more sedentary over time, PE levels on our muscles start decreasing, and our mitochondria don't work as efficiently, just like a car that's due for an oil change. Now, if we sit less and go for that oil change, we can avoid the ugly altogether and get the engine running smoothly again. Although current mouse models of inactivity have enhanced our understanding of the adverse effects of muscle disuse, it isn't entirely translatable to humans. So part of my research has been dedicated to developing Small Mouse Cage, a novel mouse model of inactivity that reliably mimics the muscle insulin resistance we see when humans become inactive. So using this small mouse cage model along with mouse mutants of PE, my research aims to find out whether changing PE levels in the muscle can protect or worsen muscle insulin resistance with inactivity. Imagine the future if we can reliably cause physical inactivity in mice in a more translatable way. We can find out why sitting too much leads to all these chronic diseases and pave way for new therapeutic approaches to end the disease pandemic of physical inactivity. Thank you.
Thank you, Piya. All right. Our next presenter will be Chui. He is a second-year PhD student who's working under Dr. Adam Hughes in the Department of Biochemistry. The name of his presentation is Aging Like a Fine Wine.
Hi everyone, my name is Kevin, and today I'm going to be talking to you about my research on aging. So my grandfather is someone who I considered having aged well. He lived to his mid-80s, and even near the end of his time, he woke up every morning at 4 a.m. to stretch and go on a walk. He then spent the rest of the day working on puzzles and building things in his workshop. I think that this is an image of how most of us would want to live out our golden years. With the number of responsibilities decreasing, we're able to slow down and smell the roses. Unfortunately, there are many diseases that come with age. These so-called age-related diseases include Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, renal failure, amongst many others, and they affect multiple organ systems. I think we're all aware of how debilitating these diseases can be for the individual, but also for the individual's loved ones who are taking care of them. Even though these diseases affect multiple organs, they usually develop because of something going wrong at the cellular level. Every organ is made of cells, which are the basic building blocks of life. And every cell contains structures called organelles that function together to keep the cell alive. You probably have heard of these organelles like the lysosome or the mitochondria. The lysosome breaks down molecules in the cell into smaller ones and also acts as a storage space. The mitochondria are often referred to as the powerhouse of the cell because it makes energy for all of the organelles to use. The mitochondria and the lysosome depend on each other, and our lab recently found that the lysosome loses its ability to store nutrients during aging, and so the rest of the cell gets an overload of nutrients such as amino acids. These amino acids can build up to toxic levels and damage the mitochondria. And so my research focuses on how the cell protects itself from amino acid toxicity using yeast as a model. This is the same yeast that you would use in baking, brewing, and winemaking. There are different ways that the cell can decrease the amount of amino acids that get inside. And one of these ways is to reduce the number of transporters on the surface of the cell. The yeast makes use of a pathway called the escort pathway, and you can think of this pathway as escorting transporters off the cell surface. To test whether the cell does this, I used a drug to block the lysosome's ability to store amino acids, which would basically simulate the effect of aging. And sure enough, just as I expected, the cell responded to this drug by reducing the number of transporters on the surface. My next step was to then test this in yeast that have lost the ability to escort transporters off of the cell surface. And this time, treating the yeast with the drug did not cause them to reduce transporters on the cell surface. But treating the yeast with the drug this time also caused them to not be able to grow in the presence of this drug, which supports the idea that being able to escort transporters off of the surface of the cell is important in protecting the cell from aging. I have many more experiments to do, but the escort pathway may become a target that we develop drugs for to slow down aging. I think it's interesting that the same species of yeast that we do research on is also used in making red wine, which we all know is linked to longevity. And who knows, the escort pathway may be the key to us all aging like fine wine, just like my grandfather did. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. All right, our next presenter is Bethany Gull. She's a PhD candidate in Identity Development, Gender, Religion, and Health in the Department of Sociology. The title of her presentation is Becoming Ex-Evangelical. Here you go, Bethany.
Hi. For many Americans, one of the most surprising facts about the 2016 election of Donald Trump was the overwhelming support he received from evangelical Christians. Some of that surprise came from within evangelicalism itself, while others familiar with evangelical culture and politics were not at all shocked about Trump's popularity among certain conservative Christians. One result of the elevation of Trump within evangelicalism was the creation of a protest hashtag that spurred the development of a new online identifier, community, and social movement among disillusioned current and former evangelicals. That hashtag was ex-evangelical. So who are these ex-evangelicals? What are they interested in changing? And how are they using social media to bring about this change? Well, while ex-evangelicals who are brought together by their shared background vary in their current religious identification, they are united in their stances on issues which place them outside of the evangelical umbrella. They've come out in support of queer and transgender inclusion, brought attention to racial justice issues, and thrown their support behind progressive politicians. Their work to redefine their religious or non-religious identities, build community, and engage in activism in opposition to their evangelical past are the focus of my research. Let's take a moment and zoom out to take a look at the US religious landscape. In March of this year, numbers were released which showed that for the first time, the majority of Americans say they do not belong to a church. This rapid growth we see in religious exiting alone would be justification for studying ex-evangelicals. But there's more to their story than just their religious change. Ex-evangelicals are utilizing social media to engage in hashtag-based advocacy campaigns, such as Church Too, in which people share stories about sexual harassment and abuse within church communities. Expose Christian Schools, which highlighted what they saw as discriminatory practices and inaccurate or biased curricula at evangelical schools. And Empty the Pews, which asked people to share the reasons why they left evangelicalism for a different spiritual path. We know that the internet has changed our lives in every conceivable way, including how we think about ourselves, which groups we identify with, and what issues we see as worth fighting for. My research with ex-evangelicals can help us to develop a better understanding of how people use the internet to build identities, how they use those identities to build community online, and how those connections can lead to moments of collective action in service of social and political change. Thank you.
Thank you, Bethany. All right, our next presenter is Franklin Maloba. He is a PhD student in the Department of Pathology. The title of his presentation is Megakaryocyte and Platelet Contribute Malaria-Related Organ Damage and Death.
Hi, Jen. We're actually going to move Franklin's presentation to the end. He's just having a few technical issues, but we should have him up and ready in just a few minutes. So if we can go to the next one, thanks.
No problem. All right. Our next presenter then will be Supraja Ranganathan. She is a third-year PhD student in the BAS lab in the Department of Biochemistry. And the title of her presentation is Identifying Checkpoints to Control Chaos.
Thank you. Every cell in our body has RNA in them. And viruses that cause COVID also have RNA in them. But how does our body differentiate self that is cellular and these foreign viral RNAs? Let us consider that students are RNA molecules. Every student who is part of a university will receive a university ID card from the ID office to mark them as self like a cellular RNA. And someone who is not a part of that university will now not be marked as they are foreign, similar to a viral RNA. So what happens if the ID office shuts down and is now no longer able to mark these students? No one in the university will now be marked And this results in recognizing even the students who are part of that university as foreign, leading to chaos. Now imagine that the function of the ID office is like the process in our cells that marks these RNAs. During development, if the marking process is perfect, the cells are happy and children develop normally like the one shown on your left. When a virus infects, their RNAs lack the marking and our body knows to kickstart the antiviral response or the chaos. However, if the marking process is disrupted or absent during development, the cells can no longer differentiate self and foreign viral RNAs and kickstart the chaos even without an actual virus infection. This is exactly what happens in a genetic disorder called Aicardi-Goutieres syndrome, where children are born with severe brain dysfunction like the one shown on your right. As a treatment, it is difficult to genetically modify the gene that does this marking process. But what can we do is to identify a checkpoint that can be activated or blocked and that will control this antiviral response or the chaos from being active all the time. Since it is not feasible to study this in children, I turn towards these tiny microscopic worms shown in the bottom called C. elegans, as they are easy to study due to their transparency. Although they diverged from humans around 600 million years ago, these tiny little worms are very similar to humans. Recently, we found that even in worms, the disruption of this marking process leads to an antiviral response that is active all the time and results in a really sick worm like the one shown on your right. For my thesis work, I'm utilizing this unique ability of the worms to identify those checkpoints that can control this chaos. My preliminary results suggest that blocking previously known checkpoints do not help control this chaos in worms. So I'm currently developing a tool to identify new checkpoints in worms, which will then inform us how to control this chaos in humans. And this will help us also design therapies to help children with this genetic disorder, like those shown on your right, lead a normal life like those shown on your left. Thank you.
Thank you, Supraja. Our next speaker will be Kelly Kerr, who is a PhD candidate in forest ecology in the School of Biological Sciences. The title of her presentation is Finding the Most Drought-Tolerant Trees.
I want you all to imagine a time when you were really thirsty. Chances are you walked to a water fountain or a sink in order to drink some water and quench your thirst. Now, just like you, trees also need water to survive, and they can also become really thirsty, especially during periods of drought. But unlike you, trees have roots and they're stuck in place. They can't simply walk around to find water. This means that some trees can die when drought conditions become too stressful. And unfortunately, for many forests around the world, drought conditions are expected to become more stressful due to climate change. But there is hope that forests can survive future droughts, because even in extreme drought, we often see that some trees can survive while other trees die. Drought is not a new phenomenon on this planet, and over the years, many tree species have evolved certain features or traits to help them deal with drought stress. These traits include things like smaller leaf sizes or using less water for growth. Yet we still don't understand which traits are the most important for drought tolerance, and we still don't understand how even within the same species, these traits can vary among populations or groups of trees. To address these knowledge gaps, I am studying drought tolerance in aspen, which is an important tree species here in the drought-prone southwestern United States. I plant aspen seedlings that originate across populations that span climate gradients, so from cooler and wetter climates to hotter and drier climates, into a common garden. I subject that common garden to a drought, and I measure traits related to drought tolerance. The common garden setup means that all of the seedlings, regardless of where they originate from, experience the same drought and the same environmental conditions. Therefore, if some seedlings are more drought tolerant than others, it would suggest that traits are more strongly influenced by genetic differences among the populations. If all of the seedlings tolerate the drought equally, it would suggest that traits are more strongly influenced by the environment, and so even aspen that come from cooler and wetter climates are capable of adjusting their traits to improve their drought tolerance. So far, I'm discovering that both genetics and the environment influence drought tolerance in my aspen. This means that some populations are more drought tolerant due to years of genetic adaptation, while others are capable of acclimating or adjusting to drought conditions. Results from this work not only identify important drought tolerance traits, but the most drought tolerant populations. We can then use this knowledge to plant more climate resilient aspen forests that will be able to withstand future drought. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. Our next presenter will be Kaitlin Pettit, and she is a PhD candidate in corporate moral responsibility for climate change in the Department of Philosophy. The title of her presentation is Why Corporations Are Responsible for Responding to Climate Change.
Hi there. For the next 3 minutes, I want you to imagine that you're starting a new company. You're thinking about what materials you should use, what to pay your employees, and so on. I also want you to think about what environmental impact you'll have. So the world is ending. I'm not just talking about the pandemic. Do you remember all those droughts and wildfires we had last year? Those were the result of climate change. If we keep polluting the way that we are, we're going to have more fires and less water each year. Current philosophical theory holds corporations responsible for helping remedy this situation because of their past actions. These corporations are to blame for the pollution that they've already caused. But this isn't working very well for us. Corporations argue that they're only responsible to their shareholders and that they're just providing the people what they want. There's also a problem with group action. No one company caused any particular fire last year, and so it's easy to push off responsibility to society at large. To solve this, I propose a new way of looking at responsibility. It's one based on your potential impact and your duty to act. So do you remember that company that you're starting? You have the potential to do a lot of good in the world by lowering your emissions or giving back to your community. This is your potential impact. The philosophical theory called forward-looking responsibility argues that wherever you can have a positive impact, you should. This theory on its own, though, is too demanding. You can have a huge positive impact by donating all of your company's profits to charity. But this asks too much of you as a corporation. You're not a nonprofit. You still need to be able to function like the business that you are. So I strengthen this theory of forward-looking responsibility with another theory called duty ethics. The people that we interact with have rights, and these rights inspire duties or obligations in each of us. My students have a right to a good education, and so as their instructor, I have an obligation to provide that. As a corporation, you have a moral obligation to provide your employees with a safe working environment in response to their right to safety. With climate change, people's right to life is at stake. People are dying because of the effects of climate change. It's because of this that everyone in our society, including you as a corporation, has an obligation to help. Now, normally with duty ethics, this obligation is very specific, something like stop polluting the river. But if your company isn't anywhere near a river, this wouldn't apply to you. And so we need to consider your potential impact as well. Whenever you can, do some good. This is a very broad moral obligation that balances out the demands of duty ethics. It's when we combine your potential impact and your duty to act that we get an explanation for why you, as a company, are responsible for responding to climate change. If we were able to take an approach like this to how we view responsibility instead of playing the blame game, we could actually make some headway. Thank you.
Thank you, Kaitlin. Our next presenter is Landen Blackburn. He's a fourth-year PhD student in the Department of Chemical Engineering. The title of his presentation is Ultimate Cruise Control: Can We Save the Grid and the Planet?
Have you ever thought about the modern wonder that you can flip on a light switch and lights turn on any time of the day without fail? This generally works because behind the scenes is an army of massive steam-powered turbines. Each of these turbines have to spin at 50 hertz in order for the power supply to work. Too much or too little, and you get blackouts or surges at best, or at worst, you destroy all of your infrastructure, and then you get blackouts. Consider an analogy. I task you with driving a car at exactly 50 miles per hour. Despite hills, wind, and poor visibility, you have to maintain that same speed. This is what it's like to be a power plant operator. And it's really hard work. Engineers in the UK realized that the key keeping their grid stable is to spend more time watching soap operas. It turns out there's a 3 to 5 minute window immediately after the most popular soap opera where 1 to 2 million electric tea kettles are simultaneously plugged in, and the operators had to be ready to ramp up right as this happens. But you may say, we should just be using renewable energy anyway, so why bother getting fossil fuel plants more efficient? Believe it or not, more efficient fossil fuel plants are actually the key to using more renewable energy. Using our car analogy, renewable energy is kind of like a tailwind. It pushes your car, so you have to burn less fuel, but you still have to be ready to quickly step on the gas or let it off if the wind changes, since you need to maintain your same speed. As we get more renewables, this leads to what experts call the duck curve. If you trace the back of this duck with your finger, this is the daily production profile for a power plant. You can see that when you get to the head, you have to go up pretty fast. And this is where my research comes in. We want the car you're driving to be able to accelerate faster and handle steeper hills. This means making electricity producers more nimble. It allows them to adapt to the massive swings caused both by users and by renewables. After all, what do you think happens when the sun goes down or the wind stops? So, what have we done? We've been applying artificial intelligence, big data, and a bunch of math to power plant operation to build the ultimate cruise control for power plants. We've been testing it out here in southern Utah. We've seen decreases in emissions, decreases in fuel usage, and most importantly, an increase in ramp rate. We can ramp these plants up and down faster. We can safely plug more solar panels and wind turbines into the grid without a risk of it collapsing. Now you might be thinking, well, great, but I'm not a power plant. I'm not in charge of a power plant, so how can I help with this? And you can, but you're gonna hate me for this one. I need you to flatten the curve, the duck curve. Currently, peak energy demand is in the evening, solar midday, and wind in the middle of the night. If we can each try to better align our personal power usage with the renewables, we can take some strain off these plants and get more renewables in the process. Thank you.
Thank you, Landen. Our next speaker is Morgan Nelson. She's a PhD candidate in the O'Connell Lab in the Department of Pathology. The name of her presentation is One Big Problem, One Tiny Solution.
Have you ever gone on a diet? If you have, you're not alone. In fact, 45 million Americans go on weight loss diets every year, and the diet industry is now a $70 billion enterprise. And yet, so many people fail to lose the weight. What if I told you your genes impact your ability to gain or lose weight? While diet and exercise are still the main treatments for weight loss, we now know that some people have a harder time losing weight than others, making them more prone to obesity, type 2 diabetes, heart disease, and cancer. I am studying why this happens at the microscopic level. In my thesis research, I have discovered how a tiny molecule called a microRNA has a big impact on obesity. To explain, I want to compare our bodies to a car. In our bodies, proteins are the fuel that keep our cells functioning normally. Messenger RNA is the gas pedal telling our bodies to make more protein. But we want protein production to stay within the speed limit, and that's where microRNAs come into play. Discovered less than 30 years ago, microRNAs are the smaller cousin to the messenger RNA, and their job is to stop the messenger RNA in its tracks, putting the brakes on protein production. This is a normal and healthy process that fine-tunes how much proteins we produce. But much like the brakes on your car, if microRNAs go out, it can have major consequences. One microRNA in particular may protect us from developing obesity, and we see this in actual patients. People living with obesity and type 2 diabetes tend to have less of a gene known as microRNA 146. If you can think of a better name for it, please let me know.
But in order to understand why certain people have less of this gene, I study mice that lack microRNA 146. And guess what? These mice develop symptoms of obesity and type 2 diabetes despite consuming the same amount of food as normal mice. We are learning that this microRNA controls important functions, including metabolism and inflammation. I am using this knowledge to test new therapies, including a drug that would replace microRNA 146 to prevent or reverse disease. While the diet culture may not be going away anytime soon, my research is getting us closer to creating a healthier life for people whose genes may be fighting against them. Thank you.
Thank you, Morgan. Our next speaker will be Maeve Wall. She's a second-year PhD student studying culturally sustainable practices in education in the Department of Education, Culture, and Society. The title of her presentation today is Education, Not Incarceration, a Call to Abolish Punishment.
When I was a kindergarten teacher in New York City, I was instructed to order my class of mostly Black children to lock their hands on top of their desks and to punish those students who didn't comply. I knew then that that felt wrong, but now, as an educational researcher, I understand why. Now, my research calls for the abolition of punishment. Abolition was first conceived as a way to end slavery in the United States. Today, many scholars argue that today's system of mass incarceration is a modern day form of slavery. Like those who were enslaved, people who are incarcerated are dehumanized and relegated to second-class citizenship status. And today, Black Americans are 5 times more likely to be arrested than whites, and these disparities cannot be explained away by differing rates of offending. What is perhaps even more alarming is that this same trend of disproportionality exists within American schools in what we call the school to prison pipeline. Through teachers' implicit biases and school punishment practices like suspension and expulsion, Black male students in particular are pushed out of the classroom and into the criminal justice system. Black male students are suspended 3.8 times more frequently than their white peers and are twice as likely to be expelled. So, drawing from abolitionists, my solution to the school to prison pipeline is to abolish punishment. So, discipline is different from punishment. Punishment excludes, and it differs based on race. Discipline includes. It keeps students in school using rigorous anti-racist curriculums and relationships based on care and connection. You see, abolitionists don't believe simply in tearing down systems. They ask us to imagine new, life-seeking practices to take their place. Imagine teachers preventing harm in the classroom from ever occurring by keeping a loose eye on students, assuming students' brilliance, and helping them develop academic and emotional skills to feel successful. And in response to harm, teachers can use restorative justice circles where students talk about how to repair relationships and have class discussions based on accountability. Later in my teaching career, my kindergarten class and I created a list of promises that we kept to each other. When a promise was broken, we would talk about it and make a plan to improve or repair the harm done. Over time, students would actually refer to the promises with each other, respectfully creating a just and empowering classroom for themselves. I imagine a school that could not have punishment, that could not lock a student's hands. Instead, I imagine a school where students are engaged in life-seeking practices and humanizing practices. Imagining abolition has always required dreaming and reaching beyond what currently is. It is time we do just that in our schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Maeve. Our next presenter is TK Coody. He is a PhD student working under Dr. Adam Hughes in the Department of Biochemistry. The title of his presentation today is How Cells Keep Their Rooms Clean.
Hello, everyone. My name's TK Coody, and today I'm going to be talking to you about something that you may know is occurring every second of every day without even realizing it. I'm talking about aging. And I'd like to share this quote. Life is a gift of nature, but aging is a work of art. And as we age, we become susceptible to numerous age-associated diseases, such as neurodegeneration, cancer, or heart disease. And as we know, all of these affect a very large portion of our population. In my PhD, I have characterized one way that cells begin to age, and this has given us an insight into the overarching art of aging. To help illustrate this, I've given you two images of rooms. On the left, you have a young room. It's clean, there's nothing on the floor, the desk is organized, the books are on the shelves, and the bed is made. Now, maybe after a couple of long weeks, some long nights in lab, some time hanging out with friends, that room now becomes old and everything's disorganized. Things are on the floor, the clothes are unfolded, the bed is unmade, and I can't even work at that computer. This is the process of aging. And interestingly, one of the things that we found to go wrong earliest in aging is the failure of a cellular recycling center called the lysosome. When this lysosome fails, it no longer properly regulates amino acids. Yes, the same thing that we eat in the form of protein every day. And when these amino acids are misregulated, they disrupt how our cells use iron. And when this iron, the same thing that you can think of as a steel beam or something that you might build in a building, when that isn't properly used by cells in our body, it leads to cellular decline and the inability to produce enough energy, leading to cellular death. And in this case, we consider that an aged cell or an old cell. And so with this in mind, what I've gone on to characterize may not give us the answer to all of those age-associated diseases, but what it has done is provide us with an insight into this art of aging. And even though, as we all continue to age, it's an inevitable process, what I can say is that if we were just able to keep our rooms a little bit cleaner, it would make our lives a little bit better. Thank you very much. My name is TK Coody, and I hope you age well.
Thank you, TK. Do we have Franklin with us?
Yes.
Okay. I am going to go to your slide. All right. Our final presenter today will be Franklin Maloba. He is a PhD student in the Department of Pathology. The title of his presentation is Megakaryocyte and Platelet Contribute Malaria-Related Organ Damage and Death.
Hi, I'm Franklin. I'll be presenting today on malaria. Malaria is a parasitic infectious disease. A child dies of malaria every 2 minutes, with most of these deaths being associated to malaria-related complications, such as reduction in red blood cells counts, breakage of the blood-brain barrier, and reduction in platelets counts. Platelets are cells which are important for clotting, coagulation, and bleeding. Within the platelets are found the granules, what we call the alpha granules. These granules are important for inflammation and for homeostasis, that's balance. In our lab, we believe that platelet could be contributing to malaria severity and organ damage. In order to test this, we use a platelet sufficient mice in which they have their alpha granules intact and a platelet deficient mice in which their alpha granules have been depleted. We then infected these mice with malaria. And interestingly, we observed that the mice in which their platelets were being functional or sufficient, they had more organ damage and they died, therefore contributing maybe to the death that we're observing in malaria, as you could see a child being sleeping there. Then in the other mice which the platelets were deficient, we observed that there were less organ damage and the mice could survive. It is more than 2 minutes, a child must have died of malaria. It is therefore eminent that we try to develop targets through which we can help to reduce platelet activation and thereby reducing malaria-related deaths while putting a smile on these children's faces. It is good we fight malaria. Thank you.
Thank you, Franklin. And thank you to all of our presenters today. I'm going to go back through your slides briefly. All right, and now we are going to take an audience poll. So I have listed for you all the names of the speakers and the titles of their presentations, just to help remind you what everyone talked about. And in a minute, you'll be able to see the poll that Holly will put up, and then you can vote for your favorite, and that will go toward the Audience Choice Award today. We'll also be taking a 15-minute break at this point while our judges confer. Has the poll come up yet? There it is. Okay. And we'll just leave this slide up for a couple of minutes so that you can make your choice.
I just want to quickly mention to the judges to exit this meeting and go to the Zoom meeting where you can talk by yourselves.
It looks like the numbers have stabilized on the poll. Are we ready to close it?
Jen, it looks like we have one vote outstanding. So
okay.
I'm going to take it via chat. So we'll see here in just 1 sec.
Okay.
Thanks.
So it looks like our meet back time should be at 3:15 in order to give the judges enough time to confer. And we will see you all back here then at 3:15. I see that Detta has a hand raised. Can we take a question?
If they want to chat to the panelists, then we can see the question.
Okay. It may be too late now, but I did receive a reminder to ask people only to vote for one of the speakers in the poll.
It seems we may have some poll results. I just want to make sure that, results from the judges. I just want to make sure that Katie is back and can confirm when they are ready. You're mute, Katie. Katie, you're mute.
I was muted, sorry. I'm about to take those results over, so I realize there might have been a little bit of a unusual nature to our poll with the setup of 2 questions, but I think it's fine, and I will go over there and make sure things are going well and bring them these results, so we don't need them here anymore, I don't think. See you soon, though.
We were so impressed with, well, you got us with your grandfather right out of the chute. That was a really warm choice to open your study and to connect your work. It made it real, it made it personal, and I think it had a lot of impact. So congratulations.
All right, I'm going to take the runner-up, and I have to agree with Sarah on this. This was really great to hear all of you and these great presentations. One of my positions here at the U is the Hinckley Institute of Politics. I don't know if you have ever heard of the HIP Talks. Every year we do a 2-minute speech competition. We have a couple hundred people participate, and we get down to the final candidates. And so much about life is about being able to tell the story, to be able to engage with an audience in a way that they understand exactly what, not just what your message is, but there's some kind of motivation to it. There's something, a call to action, something that's immediately relevant for us in that research. And all of you had such great components of that today. Oftentimes I engage with the legislature. In fact, today our legislature is meeting. And as I was listening to some of your presentations today, which were outstanding, I was remembering one of our researchers that went up on the Hill last year and met with, it was the president of the Senate. And this is how he started. He said, I don't know if you know this or not, but elephants don't get cancer. That was kind of the start to this legislative committee. Maybe some of you have seen our researchers on campus that have been working on elephant blood, for example, but it was one of those great moments where this researcher said, here's your great question. Why is that? And our legislature ended up funding some of this research because not only did you hook them right from the beginning, but you're telling a story. And I'll tell the runner up here in just a moment. But one thing through that lens that I have, which is communicating very difficult things. And in the end, what all of us are going to need, particularly in your research, is to get some money, right? So you need to get some funding. And so as you think about that, and I ran some of this through that lens also, as we discussed the winners, is just always remember that kind of you're selling yourself. I mean, it's the thing that you are researching to, but in the end, do I trust you? Do I trust that you're going to deliver what you say you're going to deliver? And so my hope is all of you, because you're doing this anyway, but as you think about it, there is, are you given a reason for them to trust you? You view yourself as a brand, because oftentimes some of you said, I'm not exactly sure where this is going, but this is where the science is saying, which means what a lot of these people are doing is they're investing in you. All right. You are an investment. You are not a cost. And the more you can prove that case, I think the more effective that you can be as you try to get some money from legislators or from the federal agencies that are trying to give you money. But I think that you're just really getting it. So remember, you're building your brand in every speech you give, every presentation you give. And you should say, am I building my brand or am I harming my brand? None of you, of course, harmed your brand, but I think those are just good things for you to think about. And that's one of the reasons why we felt like our runner-up, Kelly Kerr, as our runner-up, did such a great job, not just from the very beginning, just bringing one of those issues to us, the issue of thirst, for example, something we can all relate to, and pulling this out, not just through great energy, but through the slide, which we thought was very good, and just great explanations of the impact on all of us. And of course, this tie to the greater good, sort of at the end, with the idea of there's something we can do almost immediately through your research, which shows, hey, we want to invest in Kelly because we care about not just the problem, but want to be part of that solution as well. So Kelly, congratulations on our runner-up. Great job.
Yeah, I'll jump in now here. So this is really fun. Am I coming up on the screen okay? Am I coming through?
Yeah, we can see you.
Yeah, okay, fantastic.
You're good.
Fantastic. So this was great. And I'm reminded of a quote attributed at least to Mark Twain. I would have written a shorter letter, but I didn't have enough time. And so this idea of distilling all of the complex work that we do over years into 3 minutes is a massive task. And so the amount of work that each of you put into this, congrats to you all. It's really inspiring, and it's not, it's fun to do this, and great to see sort of some of that energy and the joy that many of you brought to this. At the same time, I think as Jason was just pointing out, this is not also, a small monetary prize, but these kind of experiences will echo on through our careers. And so I took some personal inspiration because in about a month from now, I've got a 3-minute presentation. They're giving me 3 slides instead of 1, but really a similar challenge to distill that message. And this will the amount of investment that goes into that for how my lab might work in the next 5 years to a decade, this could really sort of turn the corner. So this exercise is so important. And so, we could have picked, we had really good things from each of you, as it was really fun to kind of talk about the highlights going through, but of course, only one winner. And so without further ado, Morgan Nelson, congratulations for being the 3-minute thesis grand champion this year. One big problem, one tiny solution, really well done, distilling the message. The presentation itself, you were just in command and compelling, and it was very easy to see how you were taking what is a pretty complex set of biology there, but sharing it with us in a way that we could very easily be engaged with it. And so congrats, Morgan, really well done.
I would really like to, well, I have a lot of thanking to do, but I would first like to thank you, the judges, who spent time really carefully considering. I felt lucky that I wasn't a judge, because I was thinking, oh my goodness, how would I choose? This is really tough. But thanks again to the judges. You also gave great little 3-minute presentations for us with your thoughts. We really appreciate that. I'd also like to thank the graduate school, who has consistently sponsored and supported 3-minute thesis on our campus for the last 7 years. And that support translated into making a virtual 3-minute thesis showcase today. That was actually a huge technical challenge, and I really want to express appreciation for them, because it was much more fun to watch than we might have thought when we were trying to work out all the bugs. And I'd like to thank the audience, because this has been the biggest audience we've ever had for a 3-minute thesis. That's great, and having you vote for the audience choice and all that was really fun. So, and of course, I want to thank all of you presenters. Wow, I have been able, along with Jen, and I think I speak for both of us, Jen, just to see how your presentations evolved, how your slides evolved, how the way you presented it, the metaphors you used, the stories you told. It was absolutely wonderful. This was the best ever of your presentations. It's always nice to see when that happens. So I want to recognize, as Nels said, all the work and practice that you put into this. So not only just practicing to polish it for today, but all the thinking you did to make it more accessible, more vivid, more engaging, and as Jason Berry said, more convincing. In terms of, and Jason Berry, thank you for saying to these presenters, you are an investment, not a cost, because that's something that's really inspiring. And I just also like to pick up on Sarah George, the things that you said about what they can do with this and how important it is. It's really helpful and inspiring, and it makes me even more excited to do 3-minute thesis every chance I get. So presenters, thank you for all the work you put into this. And also, I'd like to point out that since this was a time-limited virtual showcase, we could not include all the participants in our 3-minute thesis this spring, but all of you, all the presenters this spring, supported each other during the practices. We had just 2 practices, but it's your peer feedback that probably meant the most in terms of helping you see what your presentation was like, how it was coming across, and to really perfect your presentation. Your support was wonderful for Jen and me to watch as well, and your peer feedback. All of you who presented this spring will get a special 3-minute thesis t-shirt as well. So thank you so much again. We commend you all, and we appreciate all of you and all of you who are here today.
Yeah, I'll just close out here by really, I can only echo some of the words that have already been said, but I will say that, you know, I've attended several of these final showcases, and I really think the quality of the talks at this showcase were ones that really stood out. I think this was a great group of presentations. So and it's actually always a little bit, it's hard at the end where you have to only pick some. And yes, again, I was very glad not to be one of the judges making that decision, because across the board, I think the presenters did excellent. So thank you. And I just wanted to also quickly mention that we did record it. We'll post a recording at the graduate school website. So that's gradschool.utah.edu/3MT. And it'll probably take us a couple weeks. I guess we will see what can be done to subtitle before we post it. I really want to thank everybody for the hard work of 3MT, and I also want to thank the audience for joining us. Thank you all. See you.